Welcome back to Full Court Fems.
I have to be honest, Erin. I thought Providence would be intense. I certainly wasn't expecting that.
Oh my God, nobody was expecting that. And if you tuned in expecting a box score with a brawl attached, you got it.
Felt like two games layered on top of each other. Basketball and then something else.
I have no idea what that something else was, but holy cow. Somehow, through it all, St. John's looked calmer than the building. That's the part I can't stop thinking about. Final score, St. John's 79. Oh, thank God. Providence 69. 10 whole points after all of that crazy. On paper, it looked comfortable.
But it didn't feel comfortable at all. It was volatile. It felt like the building was waiting for something to explode.
And Annie called 87-78. She had the separation right. The pace? Not so much, girlfriend.
I'll take partial credit. The margin felt right, but once that game tilted emotionally, you could see the tempo shrink. That wasn't going to be an 87-point night.
That's actually the interesting part. The spread held. The style didn't.
Exactly, Caroline. Providence tried to drag this into emotion, and instead of turning it into a sprint, it turned into discipline for the Johnnies.
Honestly, this might be more impressive because St. John's didn't need a scoring avalanche. They needed stability, and they got it.
That's the growth from January.
And it started before the tip. You could hear it in the warm-ups. Every time he touched the ball, boos, and not playful boos. Personal ones, disgusting ones, awful ones.
And that matters because young players can let that seep into decision-making. Hopkins didn't. 9 points, 9 rebounds, nothing dramatic, nothing forced.
He didn't try to win the game in the first 5 minutes. He just stayed present. It was so impressive.
Then Powell fouls him, and all hell breaks loose.
That is saying it mildly. Caroline, you could feel the shift. We felt it in our TV in California. It stopped being a basketball rhythm. It became about bodies and emotion and grit and swings and punches.
You know, Erin, we actually thought about going to that game on Saturday, and I'm so glad we didn't.
Oh my
The
God.
benches were inching forward. Players were jawing. The crowd was leaning in. They actually moved St. John's fans into one of the tunnels because the atmosphere was getting out of control.
Okay,
Well,
let's not kid ourselves. You know, your husband, Annie's husband, my husband would have been the ones kicked out.
there might have been some ejections from the stands. We might have known some of them had we gone. But there were actually fan ejections as well. There were at least 2 Providence fans that were taken out of the stands as well.
And that's because there were 2 flagrant fouls. I can't even say that. I'm still worked up talking about this. Those flagrant fouls caused Mitchell, Prey, Io, and Odie to actually be pushed out of the game because they came off the bench to protect their teammates, which I feel was admirable. Providence only lost Pal and Sellers during that time. I have no idea why those are the only 2 that went, but they should have thrown more out. And then Jameer Jones later got tossed. I mean, this was chaos and craziness all at the same time.
I have to say, though, Erin, if you watch that, and we got to watch it several times because it took over 11 minutes for the refs to figure out what was happening there. I believe the only reason Dylan Mitchell got tossed was because Sellers from Providence went to headbutt Zuby Edgeworth. And Zuby stood there. Arms were down. He just stood there. Sellers went in with his head. Mitchell saw it. 2 hands pushed him away. So Zuby didn't get hit. And then you look at Hopkins. Tough foul, thrown to the ground, stands up, squares up, but does nothing. We were talking earlier about maturity and growth since January. Our guys showed it in that moment by not retaliating, not fighting back. That's the kind of stretch that unravels a team. And rotations are gone, energy is scattered, the game is broken, but St. John's didn't break. It showed during the scuffle. I'm going to call it a scuffle. It was more like a barroom brawl. But it also showed the maturity and the growth when they got back on the court after it was all sorted.
Few players for the Johnnies. Dylan Mitchell specifically has a future in boxing because that bob and weave looked pretty good when Powell came after him. But when we lost Mitchell, it was a huge hit because he had come into that game firing. He was part of the early runs opportunities that gave the Johnnies that first quick 25 right then and there in the first few minutes of the game. But the bench showed up, and they showed up big time, and that's where the game stabilized.
Dylan Darling, man, I wasn't high on him in the beginning of the season, but this kid coming off the bench, he didn't just score in this game. He changed the posture. 23 points, 8 rebounds, but more than that, urgency without panic.
That's true. He had quick hands on defense. He controlled the pace on offense. He was absolutely stellar with the steals and the way that he managed that court. He didn't speed up because the building sped up and it was emotional, and that's not easy.
And this wasn't a Zuby explosion game. 14 points, 4 rebounds.
What I actually like about that is that it means the system that Pitino has put together worked.
Sellers gives you 11. Hopkins give you steadiness, no hero ball.
Only 8 turnovers with all of that emotion going on. The Johnnies had the rebound advantage, 15 points off of Providence, 14 turnovers. That's adult basketball showing up in February.
Go back to January 3rd. Providence closed the game on a 22-7 run.
And on Saturday, that run never came. And I don't think it would have, even if Powell was still in.
I don't either. That's not revenge. That's evolution.
Providence tried to pull St. John's into chaos the moment those boys hit the court, and they simply didn't go.
Now they go to Milwaukee, and Marquette doesn't try to drag you into chaos. They drag you into speed.
Well, and that's a completely different stress test then, right?
Let's rewind to January 13th. St. John's wins 92-68. That was domination.
So they shot over 50%. They ran. They owned the glass.
But Ben Gold didn't play, and that changes the geometry. He stretches the floor, pulls bigs out of the paint. That's real spacing pressure.
And we all wondered what happened to Gold, and he was put on the injured list. So we don't exactly know how he's going to play against St. John's. But we do know that Marquette is a top-tier team in pace in the Big East. They want more possessions and more shots. They want games at 75 trips up and down that court, early clock decisions, and quick threes.
They average strong transition scoring numbers. When they get live ball turnovers, they convert quickly.
Chase Ross is actually their scoring engine. We've talked about him before in that first game. He gets high usage. He's aggressive downhill. He had 20 points in the first meeting, even in a blowout.
Nigel James added 17 that night. Both can score in bunches when the game speeds up.
So if Gold plays, he adds front court scoring and rebounding, which tightens their half court spacing.
Yes, Erin, but recently games haven't gone their way. In fact, they dropped games to Villanova and Xavier.
And in both, when they couldn't control the pace, they truly did look unsettled. And that's the window for the Johnnies.
So here's what makes this interesting. Providence tried to pull St. John's into emotion. Marquette will try to pull them into tempo.
So that's not louder, but it is faster.
And speed is deceptive. So let's discuss the keys for St. John's to win.
Key number 1, control the possession count.
Let's start with pace math. If this game gets into the mid-70s in total possessions, that favors Marquette. They want volume. They want chaos disguised as rhythm.
You're right. And if you slow it down, you're not going to give them extra chances.
Key number 2, under 10 fast break points.
Fast break defense isn't just about getting back. It's actually about knowing what to shoot. If you take bad threes early in the clock, that's a fast break the other way.
Exactly. So St. John's needs to keep them under 10 transition points.
Key number 3, win the boards again, even if Gold plays.
This is the quiet lever. In January, St. John's didn't just shoot well, they owned the glass.
And when you rebound, like they did in January, you dictate when the next position begins.
Key number 4, shoot 35% or more from 3, but take the right ones.
Don't just throw the ball up for ego ball. Marquette collapses hard in the paint. Kickouts will be there.
Rhythm threes, not ego threes.
Key number 5, execute 15 or more assists to move them side to side.
This is my favorite one. Assists tell you if the offense is breathing.
And in their last matchup, ball movement broke Marquette's rotations.
So if those are all the habits,
let's put measurable pressure on them. Bold or busted. Marquette, game 2.
Number 1, hold Marquette to under 75 points.
This is the pace barometer. If Marquette scores 80 plus, that means the game tilted fast.
Under 75, Erin, means St. John's dictated rhythm.
Bold prediction number 2, St. John's has less than 10 turnovers.
This one's non-negotiable. Live ball turnovers are oxygen for Marquette.
And what we saw in Providence, 8 turnovers, that's the model. If they repeat that level of care, Milwaukee gets quieter.
Bold prediction number 3, St. John's delivers 18 or more points in the paint.
Paint touches aren't just scoring. They create inside-out rhythm.
St. John's gets 18 or more in the paint. They initiated contact.
Bold prediction number 4, 3 St. John's players will score 15 or more points each.
I hope so, Erin. This isn't about volume scoring. It's about balance.
It absolutely is. And we did see 3 players in the Providence game score in double digits. Marquette couldn't key in on anyone in the last matchup. If there's 3 players who hit 15 or more, that means the defense stretched. And stretched defenses don't control pace.
All right, Erin. Final prediction, number 5. St. John's wins the rebounding margin by at least 8.
We've discussed it before. With Gold on the bench, this was the hidden stat from January. It wasn't just shooting. It was all about the boards.
St. John's wins the glass by 8 or more. That's not coincidence. That's physical control translating to tempo control.
Okay, so rebounds, turnovers, balance, these are the critical components of this win.
Those 3 things lean St. John's. Pace won't matter.
And that's the thing about Bold or Busted. It tells you how a team wins.
But it doesn't tell you what the scoreboard says.
Well, for that, we have to bring in the closer.
Annie?
All right, let's go to Annie. Providence tried to drag them into emotion, Annie. Marquette will try to drag them into speed. What happens in Milwaukee?
I'm ready for another Red Storm rumble, Erin. I think Marquette comes out flying. Early threes, early pushes, and I actually think they'll have a stretch where it works.
So this isn't wire-to-wire calm?
Caroline, I don't think so. I think there's a pocket where it feels uncomfortable. But there's the difference. St. John's doesn't chase it. They don't try to answer every run with a bigger shot. They rebound. They protect the ball. They get 2 feet in the paint before they settle. And that slows it down without looking slow.
All right, so this sounds like it's about restraint then.
Exactly, Erin. Controlled aggression. I have St. John's at 79, Marquette 71.
That's not a track meet.
No, Caroline, that's a team deciding the terms.
All right, game 12 in this streak. Providence tested their composure, and Marquette will test tempo control.
And then Creighton tests decision-making at MSG.
Well, we know about Creighton. They're methodical. They don't need chaos. They don't need a sprint. They just need you to miss a rotation once.
And when they get clean looks, they make you pay.
You know, what I love about this 3-game stretch is it's actually the right time for them to start preparing for the tournament. These games want to know very specific things. Who are the Johnnies when it gets loud? Providence. How do they respond when the game gets fast? Marquette. And what happens when it gets precise? Creighton.
Milwaukee is the next test. We'll see if structure shows up again.
And hopefully you'll show up again. Stay with us as we continue to march with the Johnnies on their path to #1 in the Big East. Subscribe to Full Court Fems, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube.
No hype, all hoops.
Let's go, Johnnies!